This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh is back from his hiatus, and we talk about, well, the NFL, college football, and of course, postseason baseball. We first talk about the NFL. We talk about the Browns' lackluster of a game. Talk about some other news going around with CJ Stroud, what's going on with the Bears, and so much more. We also focus on college football. What's happening with all the big teams, the top 10 teams? Is there legit a number one team, or are we looking at a lot of good teams? And then we finish up by talking about postseason baseball, who's going to win it all, and who are our MVPs and Cy Youngs. All that and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. I'm Ben, and yes, that is Josh. He is back from his hiatus of a week. Aaron Lynn did a terrible job, so we fired him. I'm kidding. Aaron, you did a phenomenal job. You always speak way more eloquently than I do, and you make me sound like I need to study a little bit more when it comes to sports stuff. But hey, Aaron did a great job. I'm sure Josh was appreciative of having someone fill in, so it just didn't happen last week. How are you doing, Josh? I should ask that.
Yeah, we're doing good. Got to sit down and watch a little bit more college football this weekend than what I have up to this point. And football in general, I watched a lot of bad football this weekend. Ben, I don't know about you, but it started off with high school Friday. We had
I saw you were at a game.
We had a matchup of a state ranked versus a state ranked, the two best teams in the SBC conference up here in Northern Ohio. And the gap between the two was astronomical, like 49-14 we're talking about. Well done, Perkins High School, by the way. Then you go into Saturday, and I'm watching Georgia struggle with Auburn. Brock Bowers putting the team on his back. And then I watched that joke of a defensive performance between Ole Miss and LSU after that.
That was awful.
And on top of it, had to listen to Robert Griffin III commentate it.
Oh, dude, Robert Griffin. I want to just say this right now. I think you'll agree with me. Robert Griffin III should never be allowed to commentate a game.
He doesn't add anything. He every now and then just says something wild and out of pocket, borderline inappropriate for TV to keep himself relevant.
Yeah. It's so bad. The only thing he said good all weekend was that CJ Stroud might be the quarterback one of the class. That was the only smart thing he said all weekend, and it wasn't even on TV. It was on Twitter. But, no, I agree with you. I watched a lot of football. No, actually, I didn't watch a ton because Ohio State didn't play. And as Josh knows, when Ohio State doesn't play, I tend to not watch a lot of football. It's like my free weekend where I kind of just do other things. I didn't have football this past weekend. There's no personal football games for me to coach or anything. I will say that I wish I could have watched the high school football game because good old West Liberty, which Josh, visited, the old West Liberty Salem faced a state-ranked team. They're ranked 8th, West Liberty. They faced the third-ranked team in West Jeff, which are the top two teams in OHC. And the final score, Josh, was 63-47. 63-47. The starting running back for West Liberty, I believe, had 17 carries for 220 some yards. Their starting quarterback had 300 and some yards passing. I've never seen a West Liberty team only throw the ball like a handful of times, 12, 13 times, and they just decided to run it even when they were down like 15 points. So yeah, that was kind of cool to follow as it was happening. And then obviously no Ohio State game this past Saturday, so I didn't do much. Then Sunday I attempted to watch the Browns game, which we'll get into, of how demoralizing, depressing that was. But yeah, that sums it up. Obviously also the Guardians and the Reds season's finished because, they just can't seem to pull that through. But we will be talking about baseball. I know I've had people ask me if we're ever going to focus on baseball again. I'm like, listen, people, it's fall. All right. And when our teams aren't good, we tend to not want to talk about it. All right. It brings bad experiences, but no, we're going to start with the NFL. Kind of because there was more NFL games that were more intriguing, I guess, than college football games. So let's start with the biggest sore on our backs over this weekend, Josh, and that was the Browns. And before I say my take, because I had some lovely Ravens fans text me during the whole game, and that just boiled me over. Give me your take on the game, and I think we both can say that we weren't thinking it was going to be a win after we heard the news before the game started. Maybe that was just me.
Say that again.
No, I was saying is that I think what I'm saying is that before the game started, we hear about Watson, right? We hear about Watson.
Yeah, the shoulder issue. He hasn't
shoulder
really
issue. So what I'm
practiced
saying
all
is,
week, but he said that he was going to play on Friday.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that we didn't know what was going to happen. So before that, before the game started, I think we both could probably agree once we heard that Watson wasn't going to play, that maybe it wouldn't go as well as what we thought.
Yeah, and I think that's what people are mostly upset about is it sounded like Watson was going to play all week. He said that Friday, but then you get to the day of the game and he can't throw a pass farther than 10 yards when he's on the field. So he sits out, but medically cleared. So I don't really know what medically cleared means anymore, but it did look like a team without its starting quarterback and without its starting running back. The offense got nothing going on. Baltimore looked like they were in total control the whole game. Our defense cleaned up a little bit in the second half.
They played okay.
But yeah, Baltimore for the most part. I mean, Lamar Jackson made a lot of good throws. Mark Andrews made a lot of great catches.
They had a lot of good
over
runs. 2 dudes was unreal.
Yeah.
That was unreal catch.
Yeah, Lamar's a great quarterback. I don't care what anybody says. But yeah, on the Cleveland end, I mean, we looked like a team without its starting quarterback and starting running back, straight up.
Yeah, I think. Okay, I'm just gonna be honest. Ford is not the answer at running back. Can you agree with me on that, Josh? Because this is now 2 weeks where I'm like, this dude is not. He's not doing anything that's going like this is our number one, or maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me. What are your thoughts on that? Because he definitely didn't look like running back one at all in that game, and it could be offensive line as well. But I think it's a lot with him as well.
Yeah, maybe a little bit with the offensive line. I know Jedrick Wills already has, I think, as many pressures allowed as he had given up all last season. So that's off to a good start. But the other thing, too, is like when DTR is playing as bad as he is, you know that the team wants to run. So Baltimore can, stack up and force the pass. And Cleveland, for the most part, is always a team that plays the best when they can run the football. That's I mean, what Nick Chubb does for you, and we don't have him now. So, if you're going to have a lesser talented running back, obviously you got to have a quarterback that can open up that run. You got to have a strong offensive line. And right now, at least on Sunday, we didn't have really either. It looked like.
Yeah. And I think even DTR, and we'll talk about DTR here in a second, but
I miss Josh Dobbs. I'll just say
that I was actually, that was my next
words
question.
I didn't expect to say.
That was my next question I was going to ask, do the Browns regret trading him for a 5th round pick when and I said this to a couple of my buddies, Browns fans that are my buddies, and I said, this is a risky trade. Josh Dobbs proved himself in Tennessee last year at the end of the year. The Browns signed him back. They lost Brissett. What do we know with Brissett? He was able to get the job done because he'd been there. He'd done that. Josh Dobbs showed that at the end of the last year he can do it. Preseason, he showed a little bit, but I don't know if the Browns they put way too much on Dorian Thompson-Robinson and what he did in the preseason against third-string dudes, second-string dudes. He was facing a legit defense, and he looked like a rookie quarterback that was getting a deer in the headlights look. Man, every time he threw the ball, I was like, could be picked, could be tipped. He'd run then they had stupid Moore, who, oh my goodness, Elijah, oh my word. He ran 20 yards backwards. I'm tired of him, and I had a couple other radio guys say this too. I'm tired of him trying to make plays when just, dude, take the loss. Take the 4. You might get a touchdown out of that. You might get a better angle at things. But it just all these Browns, they want to make plays, and it's like, guys, just take what's given to you. So to me, Dorian Thompson-Robinson looked like a guy that was just. He kind of did. You know what he reminded me of, Josh? He reminded me of that kid, that joins basketball. In your junior year of high school. It's that kid that's a junior with you, and he's never played before, but he's a good athlete, but he doesn't get it. And it looked like Dorian Thompson-Robinson just did not get it. Do you have anything to add to that? Do you have any thoughts on any good things you saw, or is it just really this guy's just very raw?
Definitely very raw, being a 5th round pick and all. And I don't know if we win the game if Josh Dobbs is playing quarterback, but I know over at Arizona, he doesn't have any interceptions, and he's the 5th or 6th highest in completion percentages this season. So definitely could have managed the game a lot better, maybe opened the run a little bit. I don't know what Dorian's stats were, but I don't think we finished with 100 total passing yards. I mean, it was pretty bad.
I think we finished like right over 100, I think it was. And I know like running the ball, we finished at like 90 something or something like that. But that was because of a 40-yard run at the end of the game that had nothing to do with anything.
Right.
Yeah, the offense just looked bad.
Yeah. The other thing too is like, yeah, this one sucked, but we were in this situation with Baker Mayfield with the torn labrum, and he wasn't good to play, and they threw him out there anyways, and you look bad because of it. So if it's Deshaun Watson with something that's actually an issue with his throwing shoulder, I'm okay with. And you got the bye coming. That's what I was going to lead into. Is like, so you got this game to sit out. I mean, I hate losing the game at home in the division, but if he can't throw farther than 10 yards, then I don't feel good throwing him out there anyways. But we get this game, we get the bye week, and then he can come back the next game ready to go. 49ers. And the schedule ahead of us doesn't look too difficult either, as it may initially have at the start of the season. So
yeah, I mean, you got the 49ers right after the bye, which is not looking like
that's the big one.
This is the thing, and I wanted to say something about the defense before we move on. I want everyone to be clear. Like the defense was not helped with some of the, I guess, I don't know, some of the bad, the interceptions that gave them basically on the 10-yard line. The Ravens, they were going to score anyways, right? Like, so for the most part in the second half, I agree with you, Josh. The defense cleaned some things up. Like again, they did kind of. Lamar Jackson did Lamar Jackson things, and he does what he always does with the Browns and runs all over them. It does show me that the weakness for this Browns is when there's a mobile quarterback. Like I'm already starting to see how this is going to start playing out. Like again, if you look stat wise, the Browns are still a top 5 defense. I just think that they need to really clean up some of these little things, like stopping the run on option plays, stopping these mid-range passes. What's killing them, not necessarily the deep balls, not necessarily the short pass. It's this mid-range to Mark Andrews. A lot of these other guys are just finding gaps and spaces within the defense. Give me your thoughts on the defense. Is there anything that you saw it was like blatant, like red flag, or was it like, hey, let's just clean some things up and I think you're going to be all right?
Yeah, I think this is. When I was watching the game, it's like, this is the longest the defense has been on the field, it seems like. But when you get to the box scores and stuff, Cleveland actually had possession of the football, I think, longer than Baltimore did, if I remember right. And I was like, well, it sure didn't feel like it from watching the game. But there's a lot of possessions, a lot of punts, and some of that's because we cleaned things up, like you said, in the second half. So Baltimore wasn't moving the ball as quickly, maybe, but I feel okay about the defense still.
And the defense line played pretty well. Like Garrett had a sack, I believe. There's a couple other guys that had sacks as well. So it wasn't like they weren't getting to the quarterback. It's just I think Lamar Jackson has such a quick release that it's very hard to get to him. When he wants to let that ball out, he lets that ball out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Lamar's good.
Yeah, dude, I'm with you with like people that still say he's a running back. I'm like, dude, this dude's a legit quarterback. Like, he's just a freak athlete. He's we'd be saying the same thing about Hurts if we would say similar things about him if Lamar Jackson hadn't come in the league yet, because it's basically what Hurts is. Maybe not as good of a runner, but he's still that kind of quarterback. But he maybe a little more developed in passing. But again, we forget Lamar Jackson is the former MVP. Like, there are moments when I hope that Watson can be half of what Lamar Jackson is. Can we just get part of old, Watson back? Yeah, it's interesting. There's also rumors of like drama going on between Stefanski and Watson. I don't know if that's any true or anything. But let's before we go into this coming week with the Browns, are there any other games you wanted us to talk about from this past week in the NFL that kind of shocked you, or maybe you said, wow, this team is really legit after 4 or 5 weeks of football?
There were a handful of maybe drastic turns of events, like the Miami Dolphins only scoring 20 points,
know, that was
coming off
so
that
70-point
game.
That was a weird game. They got their butts handed to them. By the way, AFC East has beaten everyone. Like, each team has beaten each team. Like, everyone's beat one team, so it's kind of an open race.
Yeah, another great week for Devin A-Chain in fantasy football, though. I've played him both weeks.
And you're racking up them points.
Yeah, only won one of those games, though. So it's not need a little bit more performers than just him, but that was one that I thought was interesting. The
What
other
about the
one,
Bears? What about the Bears? I mean, they
that
blew the
was what I was
game.
just going to bring up.
Yeah,
The Justin Fields
he
had
looked
the game
good.
of his life,
He looked
and
good,
it
man.
still wasn't enough to beat Denver.
What do you think with
As
the
bad
Bears?
as Denver's been.
What do you think with the Bears? Do you think it's like? Do you think they move on from Justin Fields? Personally, I believe that Justin Fields just doesn't have enough around him. Like that. That's my feeling. But again, I want to
think
hear
this
your
is
take.
the most help he's had around him his whole career, and it's still one of the worst seasons he's had. I mean,
Yeah.
you've seen the tape that everybody's
Yeah.
been replaying from last week where there's open receivers down the field wide open, and he's even looking at them and then doesn't pull the trigger and just takes sacks instead.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to think it might be a little more of a him thing, and I know it's going to suck for Ohio State fans to hear that, but I don't think Justin Fields is that good. He's a great athlete, but he's not a good quarterback.
No, but I think, and I'll defend him here for a second. Like, again, I'm not going to disagree with you. Like, he has not been good by any means. Like, he ran the ball great, awesome. I mean, he ran for over 1,000 yards last year, great. I think too that he just needs that. I think Chicago's just such a hard place to play quarterback, to be honest with you, right? Like, do I think he could be better in other places? I think, I heard someone say, like, if you took Justin Fields and you put him in like New Orleans, or you put him in, San Francisco, like maybe his numbers look better because of the people that are around him. Maybe he develops a little bit more. I don't know. Again, I don't think the front office, I don't think the coaching staff has helped him over the last few years. Now you could say like he's had all the help he can get this year. The offensive line still sucks. So to me, it's that weird balance. I agree with you to an extent. Like, he's not as good as I think what people thought he was going to be coming to the league. But I do believe that there needs to be a little bit of an overhaul. Like, maybe run the ball a little bit more. Not him running it, but run the ball a little more. Create some ideas. You have Cole Kmet. I don't think DJ Moore's necessarily been that guy necessarily this year yet. So, again, I've seen the video as well as you have. It looks bad when you think about how good he was in college, because I think me and you agree. He was amazing in college. He was phenomenal. But like you said before on this show, there are many college quarterbacks that just don't translate to the NFL. And maybe that's Justin Fields. But I think you have to give him maybe one more this year, and then you kind of play out his contract, and then you see what happens. At least that's my thoughts.
Yeah. The other game that I thought was crazy was the Rams-Colts game. I think the Rams were entering like late in the third, early in the fourth, shutting out the Colts. They were up 3 scores, and then it was a game that the Rams did manage to win, but it took overtime. Like, the Colts ended up making the huge comeback at the end.
What about their rookie wide receiver, man? That Nakua is phenomenal.
Puka Nacua.
That dude's phenomenal. Where's he even from?
Yeah.
Is he from Boise? No. Hawaii?
No, I don't know what school he went to.
BYU. I bet it's BYU. I want to bet it's BYU. I'm going to look it up right now. I bet it's BYU. What are you going to say? I'm going to say BYU. I'm going BYU.
I don't know. I mean, it sounds like he could be from Hawaii. I don't know.
Let's see. BYU. That's right. Yep. Played at Washington and then BYU. Thank you. I'm just going to thank you. Tip my cap to myself. But no, go ahead. Finish what you were saying about the game.
Yeah. I guess valiant effort on the Colts end and Anthony Richardson for making it interesting, but I'm surprised that that ended up being as interesting as it was.
What's your thoughts on Anthony Richardson? What's your thoughts on Anthony Richardson, by the way? How do you feel like he's done the first, few games he's played in the NFL? Shocked you at all?
A little bit. The passing numbers are maybe about what you'd expect, but the rushing has definitely helped and translated over. He's gotten some short yardage touchdowns and stuff. Nothing to draw conclusions from yet, but there's been other quarterbacks that have sucked more than him in their rookie seasons.
Speaking of rookie seasons, CJ Stroud. Let's talk about the Houston Texans. No one, I think, thought the Houston Texans would be 2-2 after 4 games. CJ Stroud set the record for most passing attempts in their first 4 games without an interception. A couple other things. He's like second most passing yards through the first 4 games behind Cam Newton. He's done a pretty good job with a very bad offensive line and not a great wide receiver core. What's your thoughts on the Houston Texans and specifically CJ Stroud? As we've debated all all spring long, Josh, who was QB1? Was it Bryce Young or was it CJ Stroud? What's your thoughts with CJ Stroud right now? And maybe you can throw Bryce Young in there as well.
Yeah, I think CJ's playing out to be the best quarterback of this class, like we thought, but
Yep.
I didn't think that he would have this much success this early, just because we had talked about Ohio State, how over there he had 2 tackles in DeJuan Jones and Paris Johnson that didn't allow a single sack, or maybe
Like,
even not even a single pressure.
Yeah.
The
That's
whole
pretty much,
his
yeah,
whole
pretty
final
much all it was,
season, he was throwing to wide receivers like Jackson Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave while he was over there. And he's gone to Nico Collins and Tank Dell, who
Yeah.
nobody's cared about at any point of their football careers, really.
Yeah.
And he goes to the Texans, has those receivers, like you said, the below average offensive line, and he's finding success. It's like the opposite of Justin Fields, honestly. So, I mean, tip the cap to CJ for being able to be this successful this early, given the circumstances. And if you're a Houston Texans fan, you got to feel good about maybe being able to put some talent around him over the next couple of years and see what kind of quarterback he could become. But off to a good start for sure.
And Will Anderson also having a great start to his rookie year as well on the defense side of the ball. What's your thoughts on Bryce Young? I know Bryce Young has maybe not had the start he's wanted. I think he had the more of the chance to have a better start to his year because he, I think, had a little more talent around him when it came to wide receivers and stuff like that. What do you think of Bryce Young? Do you think it's just kind of slow start, or do you think this is maybe what we're going to see throughout the year?
I'd lean on the slow start side of things. I think he's a good enough athlete and a smart enough player that he can improve off of this. And the Panthers, maybe kind of like how the Bears did, made an effort to get more talent around him, but it still wasn't like A-level. It was like they went out and got Hayden Hurst and Adam Thielen and Miles Sanders, who are maybe good, not great guys to put around, but better than what they had before. So, I'm never going to give up on a kid in his first season, but yeah, Bryce, it hasn't been exciting yet, but I don't think it's anything that you got to be like, shoot, we got a bust over here. He could still turn out good, but I don't think he'll ever be as good as what CJ Stroud is going to be.
Any other player performances, team that you want to talk about for this past week, week 4 of the NFL season that stuck out?
Maybe just a moment of silence for Daniel Jones, because he got sacked 11 times, I believe, this week.
dude, the rookie is a Weatherspoon from Illinois had a field day with Daniel
Devin
Jones.
Witherspoon. Yep.
He made. I'm just sorry. They paid him how much again, Josh? How much did they pay him this offseason?
4 years, 160 million, so a 40 million a year average.
Oh.
I know the whole offensive line is pretty much injured, and
bad,
Saquon Barkley hasn't been playing. But if you're going to make $40 million, I feel like you got to do a little more than what he's done,
or not throw
because
the ball.
They're paying you as if you are a reason for their wins.
Yeah, instead of throwing the ball on a 5-yard out on the goal line, you throw it inside the receiver, which is just the worst placement for an NFL quarterback. Like, come on. Like, we expect DTR to do that for the Browns because, he's just started a career. But Daniel Jones, you're supposed to be the guy. And Dayball just about lost it against him, man. That interaction was everything. It was just
I don't think many quarterbacks would succeed in with that offensive line right now, but still, it's like if you're 40 million, you got to do better.
Yeah, and no Barkley, and I don't know if Barkley wants to come back anytime soon. He's looking at that team, but the Seahawks have looked pretty good as well. Like, that defense is pretty good. Or how about even Mack for the Raiders having 6 sacks, by the way, in a game? Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I think he only had 1 sack coming into the game and had 6 of them. I mean, Mack is just he's back to his old self. Which is
maybe
he plays for he plays for the Chargers now, right? No,
it was against the Chargers.
Sorry, it was against.
Against the Raiders.
Yeah, it was against the Raiders. Yes, he's for the Chargers. He plays against the Raiders. Sorry.
Yep.
My brain got switched there. It was his old team, but so he had 6 sacks, which was pretty impressive, I guess, as well. There was a lot of crazy things going on. Baker Mayfield looks like prime Baker Mayfield again somehow. I don't know where that's come from, but Josh. Maybe he was right. Maybe Josh was right all those years ago when everyone was counting out Baker Mayfield and Josh was sitting there like, this is our guy.
I never thought he was a bad quarterback. I mean, he looked bad in his last season in Cleveland with the injury and
That's true.
offensive scheme that I don't think was set up for him. But if you can put
him
some
in a good
guys
scheme,
around
yeah.
him, and you can also, I mean, a little bit of it is because the games that he's played really good in have been against teams that aren't so great. So that's also helping, and something that has kind of been true about Baker Mayfield all of his career. But it's I mean, the Bucks got to feel good about what they got at quarterback, at least right now. It's more than what we thought. They're 3-1 right now.
Yeah.
I thought they might be in contention for the first pick in the draft.
And I think another thing too that is, I think, kind of shockwaves is what's his face now? I forget his name. Oh no, McCaffrey. There we go. McCaffrey for 49ers. I mean, he's looked like the MVP. I mean, he has the most rushing yards in the NFL right now. He had a great game, a 4-touchdown game this past week. I mean, he looks like the guy that I think everyone thought he was going to be in Carolina, and it just shows you when you put him in an offense that's deadly with a bunch of other weapons, man, that makes it really costly. And that's what I'm very worried about the Browns. Obviously, we'll preview that game next week. But didn't that worry you a little bit, Josh, when you look at that offense and there's like they have Brock Purdy, but they have about 7 or 8 other guys that can cause damage.
Yeah, you can't count the 49ers out. I think a lot of people forgot about them coming into this season for some reason. It's like, no, the 49ers are one of these teams that's going to always be a contender.
Yeah, up there with
because
the
of all
Eagles.
those
The
guys
Eagles have done well as well. So, yeah. The only other thing I think I wanted to briefly talk about before we move to college football is, did you realize now too that the Bears, with that loss, have the number 1 and number 2 pick for this upcoming draft? Could we see a Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr. connection going to Chicago? Could we see it happen? Now, I think that's a possibility. If they're sitting there with the number 1 pick and they go Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, they might go pull the trigger. Some team might trade for Justin Fields, give him a shot. I don't know.
It's what people thought the Cardinals might do, because they could have very well had the first or the second pick. But the Texans are playing a little better than a first or second pick team right now, and I guess the Cardinals, to an extent, they might still be in the mix at the end of the season.
Decent,
still,
actually. They're not playing that bad. That's what we love about the game of football. So moving on from the NFL, let's go college football. Josh, no Ohio State game. So I said at the beginning of the show, so it was a little less for me to watch, or at least desire to watch. But let's go over some of the big games. What are some of the things that you thought of before the show started that you're like, man, we got to talk about, break this stuff down? What do you got?
Yeah, I want to talk, I guess, about Brock Bowers first. I don't know if you got to watch the Georgia or the Auburn game, but
I
that's
did watch that. Yeah,
2 games now that we've seen Georgia, I think, trail.
And they're still
maybe
number 1
going
in
into the second half. Yeah, and then, I mean, Brock Bowers puts the team on his back. They end up winning the game, but I was just going to lead that into, there really hasn't been any team that really looks elite at all. No. Georgia struggling against, those unranked teams. They're going to play Kentucky this week, I guess, and they're favored by 14.5. And I mean, Kentucky, I know they're undefeated, but I don't think very highly of them all that much. Then you got Texas, who does have the win over Bama, but Bama's not looking like normal Bama teams. Plus, they got wins over Kansas and Baylor, but they had their backup quarterbacks in there. And then you got Ohio State, who wins a night road game against Notre Dame by 3, comes back. You got Michigan, who's not really played anybody, but hasn't allowed more than 7 points in a game all season, I believe. You got Florida State, who initially defeated LSU, but it looks like LSU sucks right now, has 2 losses, no defense. And then Florida State goes and almost loses to Boston College, struggles against Clemson.
Yeah.
USC doesn't have a good defense. I think that's been pretty evident with their games against Arizona State and Colorado now. And then you got,
Oregon might look like the most.
That's what I was going to get to, is like
might be
Washington played Arizona with their backup quarterback and only won by a touchdown, but Oregon, although they only beat Texas Tech by 3, I think most people think it's still a decent win, but only by 3, and you had to come back to get it. But Oregon might be the most balanced team out of everybody right now, but still, it's like
Penn State as well. There's another team.
Yeah, Penn State struggled, but they've been able to win and manage things okay. But it just doesn't look like there's an elite team in college football right now that's separated themselves from the pack after 5 games.
Yeah, that's true. It is kind of weird. I think I don't think
It's
we're
going to
used
make
to
it
that.
tough to come up with these power rankings
Dude,
too, because
my power
it's like
rankings
if I'm going to
today.
justify dropping somebody down and bumping somebody
Exactly.
ahead of them, that I could say the same thing. Is like, well, they haven't played anybody, and the good teams they have played, they've struggled with.
That is
So it's
true.
like I don't really feel like changing mine all that much.
But I think Josh too, like this might be the first time I think in our lifetime where we watched college football, at least what we remember, where like there's not a team where like that's number one. Like I think this is the first time, at least in a long time, that I can look at and go, that team's not number one, right? That team maybe is number one, right? So maybe this is the first time since we've been maybe little kids that there hasn't been a true powerhouse in college
A
football.
2007-esque season.
Yeah, that could be too. Yeah, that was one of those years where there was a ton of number 1 and 2s in that year. It was always flip flopping.
Yeah,
like every other week. Thank goodness we're on the BCS, man. There'd be a lot of people mad this year. There'd be a lot of people salty this year. This is actually the perfect year to not do a 14 playoff and do like a 12-team playoff because there's no great team. But no, I agree with you. I think there was some games. I do want to talk about that LSU game. Give me your thoughts on the LSU game. Like what is going on with these two teams, specifically LSU, but what were your thoughts as you watched this game and caught what's going on, the stats and everything like that?
Yeah, so I heard that Lane Kiffin is actually 1-18 at Ole Miss against teams that win 9 or more games in a season. So I still thought LSU was a team that could win 9 games. Even told a friend, bet the Ole Miss money line this weekend. But turns out that LSU defense really does suck. And I know Ole Miss also was coming off of a loss the week before to Bama, coming back home, kind of in a wounded animal mode. Jackson Dart looked really good. This was a high-scoring game, not a lot of defense played. But Lane Kiffin comes out, gets the win. Maybe this means that LSU is only going to win 8 games or less this season, or maybe it's going to end up being one of Lane Kiffin's better wins as a coach at Ole Miss. Either way, it was a lot of bad defensive football. I think LSU ended up missing 30 tackles in this game, which
30?
That's 30 missed tackles.
In an SEC
Their secondary
game.
not only got burned, they could not tackle. Yeah, so I don't feel good about LSU playing
or the Florida
against,
State win. That doesn't even look like a good win anymore.
That's what I'm saying is like initially it's like we've been talking about Florida State. It was like, well, they did beat LSU and they've beaten Clemson. It's like, well, Clemson was unranked and still is unranked, I believe, to this point with 2 losses, and they struggled against Boston College, and hanging over 40 on LSU right now doesn't seem like that hard to do.
Yeah, is it weird to you to see like an LSU team that just is really bad at defense? Like,
This is defensive back university.
Yeah,
they never are this bad on defense.
Never this bad.
They never are the team that like gets into shootouts like they have been. Like Jaden Daniels has played really good at quarterback,
and really well, man.
And outside of Joe Burrow, LSU really hasn't had a quarterback like Jaden Daniels. Honestly, like the numbers that he's been putting up, it's been good, and we don't usually see like this is honestly like what most Ole Miss teams end up being is like really good on offense and not really good at defense, and that's kind of what LSU's situation is right now. And they usually aren't like that.
Yeah, Jackson Dart looked amazing too. He looked really good. It's a weird year, man. Like it's just such a weird year. Like just like looking at every game and everything like that. What were some other games that maybe popped your eye? Was there any other game that you're like, this was interesting? Let's talk about the Notre Dame game. You know, Notre Dame kind of did Ohio State. They didn't Ohio State, Josh. It literally was like identical of what happened to them the previous week. What did you think about that game against Duke, and were you shocked at all?
I think that Duke is a good team. I think that Notre Dame is a good team, and I think a lot of people still have been sleeping on Duke this year. So the fact that Notre Dame, quote unquote, struggled, only won by a score against them, I wouldn't really call it a struggle. This was a game that was at Duke. I love Riley Leonard and what they've been doing over there. They've still only, I don't think they've lost a game yet by double digits at Duke. They're always competing with all their opponents. And
hopefully he's okay too with Riley Leonard, because I know he got hurt at the end of that game. So
yeah,
hopefully everything's all right with him.
I think this is the second game in a row that let me make sure it is the second. Oh, not second. Okay. Yeah, Sam Hartman, I forgot he had a touchdown against Ohio State, but
good, man. He looked really good.
They've been able to, Aldrich Estime, 2 rushing touchdowns. Sam Hartman doesn't get a touchdown in this one, only completes half his passes. The think that's, again, like Ohio State's defense, testament to them. This is a testament to Duke. Like, this is a good team, and you can't count them out. People, I know we were talking about Florida State and Clemson probably meeting in the ACC championship at the end of the year, but it could be Duke and Florida State.
Yeah,
honestly,
it could be. Notre Dame would be the ACC. Oh wait, no, they didn't join a conference because they don't. Wimps. Just annoys me every time Notre Dame plays like a good team. Like I feel like if you're an independent, you should just schedule all ranked teams. Just be like, screw it. That's what I'm going to do. But no. Yeah, it's interesting that whole, that game I think it was a crazy game. It just was so weird thinking about how Notre Dame had to go through 2 of these games back-to-back weeks. Like they've got to be gassed. Like some of these dudes have to be gassed after 2 intense games like that. I don't know who they play this week. We'll talk about the matchups for this week. But I'm very interested to hear, Josh, what about, what did you think of, Oregon? What did you think of USC, Texas, any of these teams? Like, what did you think of some of these top teams this past week? Do you think they did enough to kind of put maybe a little more exclamation point, like, hey, we're a top 5 team, top 10 team?
I think that I don't really know what happened at the end of the USC Colorado game. I know that was looking like USC landslide for a while, but Colorado scores 14 points in the fourth quarter, and USC doesn't score any, and it ends up looking a little more close than what most of the game would indicate there.
Caleb Williams,
Oregon, yeah, Caleb Williams is good. I think he threw 6 touchdowns in that game.
Really good.
Oregon, while it was Stanford, 42-6, another really one-sided game over there, winning convincingly. Was another one that was like,
I think.
Yeah, and then the Texas one, that one was a little close for a while there, but Texas eventually pulls away in the fourth quarter, and Jalen Daniels not playing that game, I think, also helped. And let's also throw out a mention of Oregon State beating Utah on Friday.
Yeah, dude, that was what a game.
No Cam Rising still finally cost Utah. I was wondering when they were finally going to lose, and props to Oregon State for getting back on their feet after losing to Washington State the week before.
DJU.
Yeah,
I think it was a Clemson problem, by the way. I think it was a Clemson problem. I'm starting to think that.
Maybe not. I mean, he was 14-25, 204 yards, a touchdown, and a pick, but I don't even know if he was getting that kind of stat lines at Clemson.
Yeah, I don't think he was.
But yeah, Pac-12 is going to get really interesting here once the teams start facing each other.
They're going to beat each other up again.
Yeah, I'm wondering if one elite team will stand out from the rest. If it'll be Oregon,
Washington. I think it's gonna be Washington.
Penix could be Washington too. Gotta feel good when your quarterbacks are Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, or Bo Nix over there.
That's true. You also look at Michigan. They had a dominant win. Penn State, they lost one of their starting running backs, so that's going to be a rough go for it a little bit to see what goes on with there. But that's enough with last week. Let's preview this week, and then we'll give you our power rankings and Heisman watch list. But any games this week? I know there are a couple good games this week, so Josh is always ready to talk about some good games coming up on this lovely weekend that's coming up. What do we got?
Well, first we got the Red River Shootout with Texas and Oklahoma.
Oh, it's going to be good.
This is going to be good. So this is possibly Texas's second hardest game of the season, and it's going to be Oklahoma's first real test.
Mm-hmm. Dylan Gabriel needs to do well. Beat up on a lot of team. He's on my fantasy team. He needs to do well.
We've seen Oklahoma beat up on a lot of bad teams, but this Texas team, you and me agree, this is no joke. They're strong on the offensive line and in the trenches. They got Quinn Ewers, a quarterback that could end up being a Heisman finalist by the end of the season. They had a really great running game against Kansas that we saw this past week too. But yeah, Oklahoma, this is going to be that test for them, and their hardest game of the season probably.
Yeah.
So
maybe we'll have another Dicker the kicker moment. Maybe. I doubt it, because Gus Johnson's not going to be there, though, because Gus Johnson, I believe, is calling the Ohio State game this weekend, I think. I believe so. So, also by the way, in that game, who do you think comes out on top? We should do this. We don't have to say a score if you don't want to say a score, but who do you think comes out on top at the end of this?
Well, I'm picking Texas.
I'm gonna go Oklahoma. I think Dylan Gabriel pulls out some magic. I think there's gonna be a little bit of a Sooner running over the old Longhorns. Good old downward hook 'em. All right, so I'm gonna go Oklahoma. I'm gonna go Oklahoma 38. I'm gonna go I'm gonna go Oklahoma 45, Texas 42. I'm gonna say this is a shootout.
Well, I do expect it to be, but yeah, I'm taking Texas, and I think they might even cover their 6.5-point spread.
Oh, that's a bigger spread than I thought it was.
Not going to be any shutout though, like it was last year though. I don't think that
What
Oklahoma
was
is
that?
that bad.
That was
I think
shutout.
yeah, I almost said shootout. I was like, no, it was a shutout. Yeah, rough there. We got another interesting Pac-12 matchup. We got Washington State and UCLA. UCLA is home and actually favored in this one.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So maybe I'm not the best person to get betting advice from, but from what I've seen from Washington State and UCLA so far this year, I'd feel really good about betting Washington State at least points, and then maybe that money line too.
I'm going to go Washington State in this one. I think Ward is a very good quarterback, and I think they have a very good team, underrated team, and I think they're going to go in there and pull out a win.
That's another one. Is like Washington State's beaten Oregon State, they've beaten Wisconsin.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah, they got some good wins this year. Then you got Alabama at Texas A&M. Bama is a 1.5-point favorite right now. We know that this game has been close the last couple years.
Texas A&M looks good.
Was able to win a couple years ago. Bama was able to squeak it out with Jalen Milroe in last season's matchup. But both teams are 4-1. I know Texas A&M is unranked right now, but they haven't looked the worst. But no Connor Wegman anymore, I believe. Season-ending injury, I think, or going to be out for a while. Max Johnson's going to be taking over. So definitely something to keep an eye on. But this game has been close the last couple of years, and I think it's going to be close again.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Alabama in this one. I think I'm gonna take Alabama mainly because I saw Nick Saban do something he hasn't done in a few years, and that's scream the heck out of his assistant coaches and players. So when he does that, he's back to old self, and I think Alabama wins this by 3 touchdowns. I think this is gonna be like I'm gonna say 31-14. Sorry, 34-14. Sorry, I miscalculated. But I'm gonna say 34-14. I just think Alabama's starting to figure it out, and the scary part is that they can still win the SEC if you look at the SEC, and that's the scary part is that you just have them sitting
not
there.
Out of it.
Yeah, you just have them sitting there. So I think it's going to be close. I think at the beginning, I think you're going to see it kind of back and forth, and then I think Milroe's starting to feel himself. He's starting to get himself in that right mindset, and the defense is playing really well, or they're starting to play well. So. I'm going to take Alabama by 20 in this one.
Yeah, Alabama's coming off of back-to-back 2-score wins over Ole Miss and Mississippi State, so I'd feel good about picking them to win by 2 scores against Texas A&M as well. Also, we got Kentucky at Georgia, as I was saying earlier. This is going to be Georgia's toughest game of the season. Yep. It'll probably be one of Kentucky's toughest games of the season as well. But both teams are undefeated in this one. Georgia is a 15-point favorite right now. Worth noting that even though they struggled with Auburn, that was Carson Beck's first game on the road.
Yeah.
New quarterback in there. Going to be back on his home field for this one. And while Kentucky is undefeated, they've been winning in some kind of ugly ways. Do you want to guess how many passing yards Devin Leary had against Florida in that 33-14 win, Ben?
I'm going to say 170.
69, 9 of 19.
Excuse me, what?
Devin Leary was 9 of 19.
Wasn't this a guy about a year and a half ago, one of your Heisman potential guys? I'm pretty sure.
Not just mine. Going to throw that out there. It wasn't just me saying that.
What was his name? I forget his name. What was that guy's name? He was on our show. Our favorite friend from Columbus area. I think it was Chris, wasn't it? Didn't Chris have him?
Driss Crew, I think is his name. Yeah.
I think he was the guy. So yeah, Josh was not alone on that. But now I think it's like he's fell off the face of the earth, man. I don't even know who he is anymore when you watch him play.
This is who you have to watch out for. This guy named Ray Davis ran 280 yards and 3 touchdowns on that Florida defense. Yeah.
That Florida defense, man, looking legit.
Yeah, I mean, this season he's got 594 yards and 8 touchdowns, so that's who you got to worry about. I feel good. I think Georgia's done well against some other quarterbacks. I think they handled Spencer Rattler pretty well. Say what you want about him, but they were really fast when I was watching that game at stopping screens and getting to the ball.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think Georgia's gonna win this. I think it's gonna be 2 scores. I think it's gonna be like probably one of those games where it's like 24-10. Like I think it's gonna be a low scoring from Kentucky's end, but I think Georgia, Bowers gets going, and I think they're gonna have a good game.
Yeah. I do have the Notre Dame matchup. They are playing Louisville, who is 5-0.
Who's also pretty good.
Ranked number 25. Well, I don't know if they're really good or if it's
They're
just
not
they
good,
haven't
but
played
yeah,
anybody, because that was a team that some people thought could maybe make the ACC championship game too, just because of how easy their schedule is with the fact that they avoid both Florida State and Clemson this season. But that Duke matchup that they got looks a little more tough right now. That Miami matchup looks like a little more tough right now. And they have to finish the season against Kentucky, which we'll see what happens with Kentucky. I know they usually start off 5-0 and then end up 6-6, but Louisville, at least to this point, has defeated NC State by 3. They mopped the floor with Boston College. They beat Indiana only by 1 score. They shut out Murray State, and they defeated Georgia Tech by 5. So those games, they've gotten a lot that they've just barely gotten by. Notre Dame is a 6.5-point favorite in this one. It is at Louisville, though.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Notre Dame. I saw what I saw out of them on Saturday showed me a lot, and I think that they're finally gonna be that. I think they're finally gonna win a game by not having to go to the final possession. I think they end up winning this game by I think at least 2 scores, maybe something like 28-14. I just think Hartman's starting to figure out that offense is starting to figure it out. That defense is not bad. They're really a really good defense. So yeah, I think Notre Dame goes in there and beats Louisville.
Same. Yeah, I'm taking Notre Dame as well. And I think the only other game worth mentioning, just because I think it's funny that they're still ranked and they're still a favorite, is LSU at Missouri. Both of these teams are top 25 teams.
How is LSU ranked? Oh boy.
Yeah, they shouldn't be ranked right now.
No.
But they're a 5.5-point favorite on the road at Missouri, and Missouri is a team that actually
They look pretty good. They look pretty
has
good.
a decent win. Yeah, they had that win over Kansas State just a couple weeks ago with that 60-something yard field goal that they kicked to win it. They're coming off of a 1-score win over Memphis, and they just beat Vanderbilt by a couple scores as well. So up to this point, they've handled business pretty good, unlike LSU.
I do think LSU bounces back mainly because of Daniels and the numbers he's putting up. The defense is bad. It's really bad. But it's hard for me to see them go, have 3 losses within the first 6 games of the year.
Yeah, they'd be 3-3.
Yeah, so I think they do squeak this one out. I don't think it's gonna be a blowout. I think it's gonna be one of those games where I think they win, near the end. I think it's gonna be a shootout. I think it's gonna be like I want to say like 38-34 or something like that. But I do think LSU comes out on top.
Yeah, it's tough to say. Like we said, they've gone against some good offenses with Ole Miss and Florida State and looked bad in those. I don't think Missouri's offense is quite at that level. But even still, when LSU played Arkansas, who's got KJ Jefferson, a solid quarterback, that was a game that LSU only ended up winning by 3 as well. So I think this is also going to be a close 1-score game too. But I'll give advantage to LSU in this one. I think they can come back and bounce back from this, coming out of wounded animal mode a little bit, maybe. But
yeah,
it's not going to be anything pretty.
And
it's a game that I will not watch.
That is a fact. A game I will be watching, I think we can finish up on this one, is the Ohio State versus Maryland game. Fun fact about Maryland, their strength of schedule before last week's game was like 150th. There's not 150 teams in FBS. That shows you how weak their schedule has been before last week against Indiana. They beat Indiana. It only jumped up to like 133. Still not within the whole FBS, so it's kind of interesting. So you see, well, they're 5-0, but I want to be very clear. Their defense has not faced an offense with the talent of Ohio State. Their offense is good. I won't give you Tua. His brother is a very good quarterback. He's probably the most veteran quarterback in the Big Ten. They have some decent athletes on the outside. They'll probably test Ohio State a little bit through the air because that's what they like to do. But I'm very interested to see a couple of things I'm interested to see with Ohio State. One, does McCord take that step forward? Does he have another big game where he can do? What do they do? And that's the other thing that goes with it. Do they lean on the pass or do they lean on the run? I think you have to give Travion at least 20 touches, whether that's pass or run. I think you're going to see Trainum get a lot of carries. We saw him score the winning touchdown. Where's Mayan? Where's some of these guys? I don't know what's happening with the running back room, but I think you have to get Harrison going as well. So I'm going to say, the defense is going to be good. We know that. And it's going to be a very high-scoring game from Ohio State. I think it's going to be low-scoring for Maryland. And I'm going to go with a final of 63 to 17. 63 to 17. Mainly because every time Ohio State plays Maryland in Columbus, they score 50 plus. Now, when they go to College Park, that's when they've had issues with Maryland. So if it was in College Park, it'd be a little different. But I think Ohio State, they figured out the offense and drop a 60 ball on Maryland. And then, maybe something else happens. We'll have to wait and see. What is your thoughts on the Maryland-Ohio State game?
I guess first and foremost, the Maryland secondary, because they had some guys that went to the league this year and were drafted pretty high, and they're going to be replacing a lot of guys back there. So always tough to do when you're a team like Maryland that, Mike Loxley does a really good job recruiting over there, and I think he's done about as good as anybody could at Maryland, but replacing some NFL-level corners at a place like that is still hard to do. You don't get those all the time over there. So I'm curious to see how those guys that they have now up to this point will match up against Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison. And I'm also curious to see how also those wide receivers go, because really outside of like the Western Kentucky game, the Youngstown game to an extent, I think that Ohio State fans would like to see a little bit more out of
I agree.
both Marvin and Emeka as well. And then the second thing is what you touched on already is, will they rely more on the pass or more on the run? Because while Kyle McCord is slowly, I think, getting a little bit more comfortable and confident, I think the run game has been a lot more had a lot more involvement in the offense than what we're used to seeing from most Ohio State teams. So we'll see if that trend continues. Maybe it's out of need, or maybe it's just because it's what's worked up to this point. But we'll learn a lot about maybe where Maryland's at, and I think more about where Maryland's at than where Ohio State's at from this game, honestly.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's a big game for Ohio State to get ready for the upcoming big games. They have Purdue afterwards, not a big test, but then they have Penn State after that at home. What is your thoughts? Do you think Ohio State Ohio State drops 40 over under?
Most years I'd say yes, but I always gotta take a second thought at it. But I'll say over 40.
Over 40. I say over 60 because all in, baby, all in. No, that is some of the games we decided to preview for today. We will do right now our power rankings and our Heisman watch list. Now, I don't think there's much change from either of our lists, to be honest. I have this funny feeling because both Josh and I we don't change every week because a lot of times we don't see the need to if no one's really made that jump. So let's start with power rankings. Josh, start from 5 up to 1. I will say that last week Aaron was very fascinated in some of your picks, so you're doing a good job, Josh.
Yeah, I think Aaron has been very reactionary week to week. This isn't any disrespect to him, but it's like when you look through some of his, and he's got like Jordan Travis there at 3. It's like I think he's still holding on to that LSU win over there, but that was also before we saw LSU against Ole Miss. So I think he may be open to changing that at this point. And then he also has Washington at 1, and I'm sure he would justify Georgia being at 3 because they haven't really played anybody or looked that impressive. But it's like Washington is coming off now again.
He said, this is what he said though, and he has said this. He said at that moment who he thought the best team and that moment was, because he said, now they might not be the number 1 team in the nation, but he believes at that moment these were the teams that he thought were the top 5 teams. Like in that moment, as a power rankings, as the teams to beat, he felt like these were the teams.
I haven't seen enough from, and he had Florida State at 2. I haven't seen enough from either of them to really make the same argument. I think the same arguments you make for Georgia not being 1, I could definitely do with both of those. So that's why it's like there's so much parity, I think, in power rankings right now, and that's why I'm trying not to react too
The
much week to
USC
week
one,
right now.
the USC
Because
one, he got thrown off by you when you did USC. He was like interesting on that
well,
one.
yeah, they're not going to be there anymore because I've seen them go against a kind of good offense and a great offense in 2 weeks, and I think if they just play a team that has a decent offense and a better defense, that it could be some issues for them. So yeah, that's the first thing that's going to change my power rankings is that USC is out, and I am ready to go ahead and throw them in here. I got Oregon at 5.
Oh, I like that. I like that. For me at 5, last week I had Michigan at 5. They will be moving up in my well, not really up, sort of up, but 5 for me is Washington. Again, I think Washington just maybe as much as I was saying that the Oregon's balance, I just think Washington maybe just tad. I think Oregon would be like 5B for me. Like it's inches, centimeters, I would say. So right now I'm going to go with my gut from last week. I drop Washington down 1, but I still have Washington at 5 ahead of Oregon.
All right. Number 4 for me is staying the same with Michigan there. I think that we were talking about Michigan, like, are they going to score points? Like, yeah, we see the defense holding teams to 7 points, but the offenses look kind of lame. But when you put up as much, and it's not like Nebraska is anybody to write home about either, but at least a Big Ten team, they put up over 40 on them like they were supposed to. So I'm keeping them at 4 for now.
And the first time we've really seen them put up 40 points, like easily. I think this is the first week where they really looked like
they did a lot of that, I think, early too in the game. Got off to a good start.
Yeah. And I'm agree with you. I have Michigan moving up from 5 to 4 this week. Again, nothing against Washington. I just feel like Michigan had more of a dominant win. Again, it's Nebraska. You can't really judge too harshly, but I'm going to go with Michigan there. I think they are a top 5 team in the country, and some people think they're the best team in the country. Let's hold on that. I don't think there's really any number 1 team in the country, but they're definitely deserving to be up there in the top 5.
All right. Ohio State's staying at 3 for me, coming off a bye. So it's like there wasn't any reason to really change their spot in Michigan while they did, pound Nebraska. It's like, okay, finally they did it. Now I can keep them at 4, but I'm leaving Ohio State at 3.
Yeah, I'm going to leave Ohio State at 3. Again, I'm not going to move them up or down. You can't really penalize a team for not playing, and you also can't. I don't really feel like you can give them a head over someone else unless someone loses. So I'm going to do Ohio State at 3. I think this week will be another test where they can show how that offense has improved going forward. So then we have the top 2, and we're on the same page here, Josh. I like this. I like being on the same page as you. It's kind of nice.
Outside of 5, yeah. But number 2 for me, I am going to go ahead and drop Georgia from 1 to 2 here.
Oh, wow. I did not see that coming, to be honest with you.
I didn't really want to do it, but
you had to send them a message.
I think right now there's a team that looks a little bit better on both sides of the football, better at quarterback. So
yeah, okay.
Georgia at 2 right now.
I'm gonna go. Dude, I don't like doing this, but I'm gonna put Texas at 2 still, and the only reason I have Texas still at 2, I told Aaron this last week, and I'm still gonna stand by it. I'm very much like, until you lose a game as a national champion for the past 2 years, it's really hard for me just to drop you from that top spot. So for me, I'm very old staunch that way. As great as Texas is playing, to be honest, they're playing like the best team in the country right now. The way they're playing, Aaron would probably disagree with both of us. But I'm more of like, I see is what I'm getting, and there's nothing where I'm doubting, right? Like, it's kind of like with Ohio State. Like right now, I don't really look at the team, maybe outside the offense a little bit, where I'm like, oh, this defense is terrible, right? I think you look at Texas, they're playing well in defense. The offense could be a little better at times, but hey, they're playing solid. So I'm gonna go Texas at 2.
Well, obviously, I'm putting Texas at 1 then, and I guess it makes sense that you're going to leave Texas 2 because you think they're going to lose to Oklahoma this weekend.
That is true. That
well,
is true. I know you don't. You're very proudful.
And I think that's going to be another win and a good offense with a good quarterback that Texas is going to be able to go ahead and add to their resume. Because, like I said, they've been playing some bad quarterbacks, some down quarterbacks, some backup quarterbacks, and that's really the only knock I can have against them because they've looked good in like all facets of the game.
Yeah, and again, I think if they beat Oklahoma, then yeah, for sure they're going to be probably my number 1. But again, to me, my number 1 is Georgia, and that is just because I think Georgia again, I can't knock a team for, again, it's so hard with Georgia because they look great. Like when they want to look great, they look phenomenal. Like that half against was it Boston College or whatever it was? They're were they losing it? Was it Boston College they were losing to? No, South Carolina. You're right. They're losing South Carolina, and then decide, hey, we're just going to drop freaking 20 points or whatever it was in a row. Like, like that's how good this team is. So I'm going to keep Georgia at number 1.
Right.
So now moving on to our Heisman watch list, something that we always love so much. This one could be interesting because I think we could shift. There are some shifting going on in my list a little bit. Probably not what I want, but hey, we're gonna shift a little bit. Josh, why don't we start with you? Last week, obviously, you had Dylan Gabriel, you had Cam Ward, Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., and Caleb Williams. Aaron had some mixtures in there. Jordan Travis being in there was very fascinating to me. I didn't tell him that, but I thought that was very fascinating. And then obviously I had Quinn Ewers, Dylan Gabriel, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix Jr. Josh, who's number 5 for you?
Number 5 for me. I'm going to go ahead and make a change here at this point just because I'm going to go ahead and put some of my predictions into this. Since I think that Texas is going to win this weekend, I think that means that Quinn Ewers is going to have a big game, make people forget maybe a little bit about what Dylan Gabriel has done this year, and I'm going to go ahead and drop Dylan Gabriel out of my top 5 and put Quinn Ewers in at 5.
Fascinating you would do that. Very fascinating. Good job.
Dylan's still playing good up to this point and probably has an argument to stay in the top 5. But
I got you. I'm going to do something. No, I'm not. I had a change in my head, but I'm not. I'm going to keep Quinn Ewers at 5. I was thinking about dropping him for Cam Ward, but no, I'm gonna keep Quinn Ewers at 5. Even if he loses against Dylan Gabriel, I still think he's been one of the top six players in the country. Again, there's not any running backs that are really showing off. There's not any really wide receivers or anything like that. So for me, I'm going to keep Quinn Ewers at 5. He's been really solid and a good quarterback and High State developed. So obviously he's going to be good.
All right, number 4, I'm leaving Cam Ward there. I don't have any knocks against that guy. He's got
he's doing good.
While it wasn't what was it, Cam Rising playing or not Cam Rising, different game. Never mind. But yeah, Cam Ward's still looking good.
Was it DJ
yeah.
he played? Yeah.
It was Oregon State, Utah, yeah. But yeah. Cam Ward's still looking good. I'm leaving him at 4.
Yeah, I'm gonna at 4. I'm gonna keep Dylan Gabriel. Again, I think if they go out and pull a win, like I think they will, then he might shoot up the list next week. But Dylan Gabriel, I think he's been very solid. He has not made many mistakes. He's been very consistent, and that's all you can ask for if you're Oklahoma, is just be consistent, make the throws you need to, and go win us some games.
Number 3, keeping Bo Nix right there.
I'm fascinated that you didn't bring him up more. I feel like I thought maybe you would have jumped him up a little bit, but hey,
there's just the guys that are above him are beating him in the totals right now. I think that, like I said, Oregon's in at number 5 for me now. It's the highest ranked Pac-12 team I got, but I think there's better quarterbacks in the conference at this point.
This is my there might be some people that will hate me in the comments still, because last week I got some riff from some of my players that I have. Caleb was at 3. He's staying at 3 for me, and I know I'm going to get people saying, well, he had 6 touchdowns, he looked good. I'm like, yeah, I just think overall through the whole season, Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. have looked more fluid through the whole year, and part of that is because they were beating teams and he was only playing a half or whatever. Don't care. To me, when I look at a team, and I guess this could be also the fact that I know they're probably not going to give him the Heisman because they're not going to try to do it 2 years in a row. They just don't, and it's not happened since Archie. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I just think that it's too many politics with that. They want to keep that the way it is. But I'm gonna say Caleb Williams at 3, and I don't care if I get flack in the comments. Don't care. I really don't care. It's my show. Don't care. My pick, my show. Josh has his picks. It's his show. It's both of our shows. Like literally, it's our show. So deal with it.
I'll talk more about Caleb Williams later, but right now I'm going to talk about my number 2 Heisman.
Oh, stop it! You do not have Caleb Williams at 1. Shut up. Stop.
Michael Penix is at number 2.
As I just said that, as I was just telling people I don't
leading the nation in passing yards. It's great for Michael Penix.
Yeah.
It's what we expect of him at this point. But Yeah, I do have somebody that I think has played a little bit better up to this point. So
Oh.
Michael Penix is at 2.
Well, Bo Nix for me is at 1. Sorry, not at 1. At 2. He's not at 1. No, at 2. I'm going to keep him at 2. I think Bo Nix has played phenomenal, like I said. He hasn't played he's only played, I think, 2 full games, isn't it? He only played like 2 full games, right? I think it is. Something like that.
Maybe 2, yeah.
But he's looked really good when he's in there, and he's looked solid. He's looking like the Bo that I think Auburn wish he was, right? I always think about it. Look at the Bo that Auburn wish he was. But yeah, he's been playing great, and I think he's the second best player in college football right now.
Right. Yeah, number 1, Caleb Williams. The secret is out.
Now that we're
Caleb
shocked.
Williams, Ben, last year threw 42 touchdowns.
Yes.
This season, through 5 games, is already halfway there.
Agreed.
Meaning he is ahead of schedule to outperform what he did last year.
I know that.
Mm-hmm. Only 1 interception this year.
Yep, I got that. Yeah.
Completing 74.5% of his passes with 1,603 yards.
Sounds good.
It does sound good. Good enough to be number 1 in my book. And I think you're right. You bring up a valid point that winning the Heisman twice is hard. Most of the time, you got to just blow out your numbers from the previous season. And at least at this point, he is on pace to do that. So I have no reason to drop him out.
I guess my other fear for him, this didn't go into my ranking idea, but I'm just saying in the future, if they have to go undefeated for him to get a chance at the second Heisman. If they lose 2 games, which it's very possible they lose 2 games because their defense sucks, then I don't know if you keep him up there. You know what I mean? I feel like Heisman wins is a huge thing now. You can't be 7-5 and go win the Heisman. It's just not possible.
Yeah. And last year it was kind of like by default. So this year he definitely would have to really go out and win it. Yeah. Being a playoff team would help. Obviously that means you got to win enough games, but
yeah, for me, number 1 is Michael Penix. I think he's been on my number 1 since the second list or maybe even the first list. I love what he's doing. He's phenomenal. The way he passes the ball, the wide receivers he have, by the way, some really good underrated wide receivers in Washington. The defense is okay. Again, I think he's one of those guys going to benefit from winning the Pac-12 and going to the college football playoff. But yeah, Michael Penix Jr. is my number 1 guy. How about that?
I mean, it's 1-2 for sure.
It is.
And
for sure 1-2.
To me, but it's 1-3 for your book.
It's still close. But we will finish up the show by briefly talking about the MLB playoffs, the Major League Baseball playoffs. They're going on right now as we are recording. The series might be almost over when I finally post this. But Josh, let's briefly have a moment of silence for our Reds and Guardians. 1 second. Okay. We had a moment of silence for the Reds and the Guardians. The Reds blew it. The Guardians were kind of not really in it most of the year, but the Reds literally had a chance to be in it, and they just decided to not have pitching because that's what the Reds do. They get all the young bats, and then they forget to develop pitching. So we saw Joey Votto's last game, which he could be his last game. We don't know. He gets ejected. Classic Joey Votto. We see a lot of other things going on at the end of this year. Give me your thoughts on the Major League season overall, and then let's talk about playoffs as we finish up here.
Yeah, I think one of the most surprising things is that the Baltimore Orioles are not only in the playoffs, but are the number 1 seed in the American League.
Shocked a lot of people.
Saw that coming out of nowhere.
When we thought the Rays were going to be that team that end up just
starting off with 20 straight wins to start the season or whatever it was. Yeah. Unreal start for them, but cool down.
Yeah. What is your thoughts?
Still in the playoffs, but
what is your thoughts on the Reds? As a Guardians fan, I know you're a Guardians fan, but if you look at what the Reds did last year, they lost 100 games, and what they're doing this year, what do you think of that? The way they're approaching.
Yeah, I mean they finished above 500 this year, which I think still exceeded expectations that we had before the season started. So I think we recalibrated our expectations a little bit when we saw what they were doing in the heat of summer, and then Ellie De La Cruz, continued to make flash plays, but he cooled off
a lot.
Overall, with a lot of numbers, but still gotta be happy with the young talent in there. Maybe now that they have seen a full season of what they do have, maybe they'll be a little bit more aggressive in the off season. Maybe make some trades to fill in some of those weaknesses. But that's my perspective as an outsider, I think.
What about your Guardians? What do you feel?
Yeah, Cleveland was supposed to win the division this year because 1, it's the worst division of baseball, and 2, they won it last year with one of the youngest teams in the league. So basically everybody was going to be back, and just didn't pan out that way.
I
It
love how
looked
you
like the coaching staff and the front office were never on the same page. The substitutions and trades were never made until it was too late. And now we go into an off season where we're trying to figure out who the heck is going to be getting hits in the future, because that was what sucked so bad.
I love how you just blatantly said they're the worst division in baseball. I love it.
They are. Did you know that Cleveland didn't even finish second in this division? They finished third.
Who they finished behind? The White Sox?
Minnesota, who won the division, and Detroit.
Detroit. Oh yeah, I forgot about Detroit.
Detroit finished 2 games ahead. Yep.
And we said goodbye to Miguel Cabrera. Hats off, Miguel Cabrera. Thank you for the memories.
So a Hall of Fame career.
A phenomenal player, as well as Joey Votto. Probably hats off to him. Adam Wainwright. A lot of those guys that are going to be hanging up their hat, which is awesome to see, and it's sad at the same time. But yeah, there's a lot of great young teams out there that are doing phenomenal. You look at the playoffs, the first games that just happened. I think it was like the rookies were the ones that were setting the show, so it's kind of cool to see. But Josh, look at this postseason. All right, we look at this. Let's give our predictions, not for each game, not for each series, for World Series. We look at this. We see the teams. Again, we could be wrong within 2 days. Like literally legit, we could be wrong. What I would say this. What is your prediction for the World Series, and then we will talk about who you think the MVP for each league would be at the end of the year. So let's look at World Series first. Prediction, who's going to be in the World Series and who's going to win it?
For me, I think out of the National League, it's the easy choice, but I'm going with the Braves. Coming in as the 1 seed with 104 wins. You got superstars like Matt Olson.
By the way, slugging percentage, I don't know if you saw, was over 500. The only team ever to have over 500 slugging percentage. Not over 500. Yeah, it was not 500. Yeah, it was 500. No. What was it? I think it was 500. Hold on, let me check before I get my numbers wrong. Braves slugging percentage.
While you're on that, I think the Dodgers became the first team in history to have 4 players with 100 RBIs.
Yeah, they're the first team to have over 500 slugging percentage. They had a 502 slugging percentage as a team. That is, and Olson had another great. By the way, who do you pick? We'll talk about MVPs. Acuna, who had an amazing year, or Olson, who had 50 plus bombs and 138 RBIs. It is wild to think about. But anyways,
yeah, Mookie Betts is in the mix too. But I really like Ronald Acuna. I think the 40 homers, 70 stolen bases is just insane.
We'll get there. So we got the Braves for you out of the NL. Who out of the AL for you?
They're probably the most experienced team in the playoffs out of the American League, and it's the Astros. And I know they lagged behind for most of the season, only led the division, I think, 24 days this year, had to deal with their own injuries and stuff. But and I know they didn't perform the best this season, these guys, but anytime you got a rotation with Framber Valdez, Christian Javier, and Justin Verlander, that's just scary to me.
And you could do a 3-man rotation, fine.
Yeah, you got to have 3 solid starting pitchers to do well here. And when you got a lineup that's got guys like Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker and Yordan Alvarez and Altuve, I'm always going to look at that. Like, it'd be cool if Baltimore was able to make a run, as young of a team as they are, like the new kids on the block. But I think that experience definitely is helpful. Tampa Bay, they had the hot start, kind of cooled off, had to deal with some injuries and things like that. Minnesota, in the playoffs by default because they won the Central. Someone had to make it out of there. Nothing really scares me over there. Texas is, I think, building something, but not quite there yet. And then Toronto, I mean, they're an exciting team to watch, but then, I mean, it's tough to make it when you haven't won 90 games. But we've seen teams like the Phillies in the past heat up at just the right time and make a run and almost win it entirely.
Yeah.
So, it's honestly, anybody in the MLB really has a good shot. If you got good starting pitching, good bullpen, can hit home runs, I think those are always important in postseason baseball. But I like Houston out of the American League versus the Braves out of the National League.
I like the Braves out of the National League. I just think they're going to be they're just hard to beat, man. They're just
104 wins, 231 run differential.
They got some good pitching, Strider and some of those other guys. And then I look at the AL, and I'm going to have to go. I'm going to stick with it, man. You know what? I'm doing it. Baltimore Orioles, I'm going to be bandwagoner. I don't care. Baltimore Orioles are going to go to the World Series. So it's going to be Baltimore Orioles versus Braves, which we never usually see 1-1 meeting up in the World Series. But I think it's going to happen this year. And then my prediction to win it all is the Baltimore Orioles. Yes, don't care. Hate me in the comments. Do not care. I'm sticking with it. I'm bandwagoning. We're going to Baltimore Orioles, winning it all, winning the World Series in 7 games. Calling it now. Mark it, clip it. You all know I'm going to be right. Just wait. Yeah, that's all I got to say.
It'd be really cool.
If I'm right, you gotta admit that's pretty cool. If I'm right, I mean it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't actually know what the general public thinks out of the American League. I know the Braves are getting a lot of talk out of the National League as well as the Dodgers, which makes sense. But in the American League, I think that's the more wide open race. And I don't know how many people are thinking Baltimore as the 1 seed, as the young team, or if anybody's like in my boat where it's like Houston, or if anybody's like, no, it's going to be Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So who do you got? Who do you got winning it all?
Braves winning it all. Too much star power to ignore.
I love it. Then we will finish up by saying our NL and AL MVP predictions and Cy Young predictions. That's where we'll finish the show up today. So give me your NL MVP and your AL MVP.
NL MVP, like I said, it's Acuna. I think he's the first guy to get 70 steals and 40 homers in a season. And he also nearly won the batting title, hit 337, had over 200 hits this year. So he can do it all. Love that dude out of the National League. You can make arguments, I guess, for Matt Olson, who led in, I think, maybe slugging percentage, RBIs, and home runs and all that. Great job filling in for Freddie Freeman, who we weren't sure how that trade was going to work out, but looks like it's going okay for them. But Acuna out of the National League. Over in the American League, I think it's maybe a little bit more of an argument for a couple guys. But, I mean, you look at guys like Ohtani, who looked like he was going to be the MVP most of the season and then had to get shut down early. I wonder how much people are going to hold that against him. They didn't get to play the last month. But that's somebody
he still hit 44 home runs with a month to go.
Still led the American League in home runs. Yes, he did.
Ridiculous.
And I'm not sure where he
OPS as well.
He ended as far as strikeouts goes. That was another stat that he was really high in, but still being one of the best pitchers and one of the best hitters in the American League, I think puts you in the mix. But other guys that I think you can include in the talk, maybe like Corey Seager, a guy that hit 33 home runs, 5th in the American League, and also was 2nd in batting average, would be one. Helped his team get to the playoffs, but yeah, I might lean Shohei by default. I'm not gonna hold the pitching injury against him, but it did suck to see his season get cut short.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for me. I'm gonna go National League. I was really close to taking Matt Olson, but after you started talking, it started making more sense. Like, dude, 40 home runs, 70 stolen bases. That's just unheard of. He hit almost 340. It's unheard of. I'm gonna go Acuna, and then I'm gonna go with you as well, Shohei. Josh, for the last few years, I've been a whole bunch like, if you can do both, you should be MVP, most valuable player. And that is Shohei Ohtani. When he's on the field and he's healthy, he's the most valuable player on your team. He can do both things very, very stinking well. So I'm going to go Shohei Ohtani in the AL for that. And then give me your Cy Young winners for the National League and for the AL, your predictions.
Cy Young out of the AL first.
Do it.
All right. So a couple of different ways you could go here. This should be
easy. I feel like this should be a very easy one.
Easy?
Yes, at least in my opinion.
I hate the guy, but I think I'm going to go Garrett Cole.
That's exactly who I'm going to go with, and that is the easy one for me. Like, you look at his numbers, it's not even close.
Led the American League in quality starts, led the American League in ERA. I think he was 3rd in strikeouts. So, I mean, that's a lot of dominance and a lot of the main stats, and then had 15 wins, which is 2nd in the American League on top of it too. So Garrett Cole.
Yeah.
Hate the guy, but gotta respect the season.
Yeah, that's who I got in there. And the NL for me, I got I'm gonna go Blake Snell. I didn't think I was gonna go that way. I'm gonna go Blake Snell. Snell. There we go. Snell. I'm gonna go Blake Snell. I think he had the lowest ERA and I believe the lowest batting average against, I believe.
Yes.
I think he just looked very dominant on a team that, by the way, should have made the playoffs. I don't know how the Padres didn't make the playoffs. I don't know what's up with like Southern California teams just like in other sports as well. Like they do so well stat wise and then just can't win games. So very fascinated with that. But that's who I got winning NL Cy Young.
Yeah, I am amused by Spencer Strider winning 20 games to lead the National League and also throw
His ERA was
281
bad,
strikeouts to also lead the National League. So that's the thing though. Like you said, the 3.86 ERA, it's kind of interesting. It's like, dang, that kind of is interesting that
Yeah.
he's winning this many games and he's this hard to hit, but still, yeah. Blake Snell with the wins. I mean, on a team that didn't play it good, that's like the last stat that I usually look at is the wins, but 2.25 ERA to lead the league. And I think also, like you said, the lowest batting average against, that's straight up dominance right there.
Yeah.
So Blake Snell for me as well.
And there it is. That's our show for this week. I hope you loved hanging out with us. I know we're loving being back together in the same place. Like I said, it's not the same without Josh. Josh makes the show a lot more watchable. Let's be honest. When it was just me, it was very boring. But then we added that beautiful face, and it just lit up the room. So no, we appreciate you guys listening. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Let us know that you love what you're watching, because we have a lot of things gonna be happening. Obviously, with different sports happening, all the craziness of football. Hey, we're here every week to give you that news, to give you those updates. I'm sure we missed them things. Let us know in the comments if you want us to talk about something different. I'm sure we can try to find time. But hey, like I said, this is our show. This is my show. This is Josh's show. Josh's show, my show. It's the way it works. We like to have fun. We also like to hear what you want to hear as well. And if you listen on Spotify, make sure you share the link with those friends and family. Have a great weekend. And until next time, we'll see ya.